The crystal champagne flute slipped from my fingers, shattering against the marble floor of the Henderson family dining room. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent space as my mother-in-law's words hung in the air like poison. "You're just a secretary from nowhere," Patricia Henderson had said, her voice dripping with the kind of disdain that money can't buy, but somehow always seems to afford. "My son deserves better than trailer park trash." It was Sunday, March 12th, 7:30 in the evening, and we were gathered for what Patricia called family dinner, but what felt more like a monthly tribunal, where I was always the defendant. The other family members, my husband David's sister Amanda and her hedge fund manager husband, his brother Robert and his socialite wife, sat in uncomfortable silence, their eyes darting between me and the broken glass at my feet. My name is Claire Henderson, though Patricia never used my married name if she could help it. I'm 34, and for the past 3 years, I've been married to David Henderson, heir to the Henderson Industries fortune. What none of them knew, what I had carefully hidden since the day I met David, was that their trailer park trash daughter-in-law had more money than all of them combined. "Clean that up," Patricia commanded, gesturing dismissively at the shattered crystal. "The help shouldn't have to deal with your clumsiness." I knelt gracefully, gathering the larger pieces in my palm, my movements calm despite the humiliation burning in my chest. The baccarat crystal. I recognized it from when I'd purchased the same set for my penthouse in Manhattan, back when I was still living my real life instead of this carefully constructed fiction. David started to stand. "Mother, that's enough." "Sit down," Patricia snapped at her son. "Someone needs to address the elephant in the room. This girl has been dragging our family name through the mud for 3 years." I continued collecting crystal shards, listening to Patricia enumerate my failures with the precision of a prosecutor. My clothing, simple but tasteful pieces I'd deliberately chosen to appear modest. My car, a 3-year-old Honda Civic I'd bought specifically to maintain my cover. My job, executive assistant at a small nonprofit, a position I'd taken because it paid just enough to seem realistic but not enough to threaten anyone. What Patricia didn't know was that the nonprofit was one of 12 charitable organizations I'd founded and funded over the past decade. What she didn't know was that my simple wardrobe consisted of custom pieces from designers who wouldn't take her calls. What she didn't know was that I could buy and sell Henderson Industries 3 times over and still have enough left to purchase the country club where she played tennis every Tuesday. "Look at her," Patricia continued, warming to her theme. "She can't even afford decent jewelry." I glanced down at my hands, one still collecting crystal, the other bearing the simple gold wedding band David had given me. Hidden in my jewelry box at home were pieces that had graced the necks of European royalty. The modest engagement ring on my finger, a half-carat diamond David had saved for months to afford, sat in a collection that included stones most people only saw in museums. "I think," I said quietly, rising to my feet with a handful of broken crystal, "I should go." "Finally," Patricia muttered under her breath. But as I reached for my purse, a deliberately ordinary leather bag from a department store, my phone rang. The ringtone was subtle, elegant, nothing like the flashy sounds Patricia's phone made when her tennis partners called. I glanced at the screen and felt my carefully maintained composure waver. The caller ID read, Harrison Gray, Esquire. Harrison was the senior partner at Gray, Matthews and Associates, the most prestigious law firm in Texas. He was also the executor of my late father's estate and the man who handled my most sensitive financial affairs. Harrison Gray didn't call unless something catastrophic was happening. "Excuse me," I murmured, stepping toward the hallway. "Oh, please," Patricia scoffed. "Take your call right here." "I'm sure it's nothing important." Against my better judgment, I answered. "Harrison." "Claire." His voice was tense, professional. "I need to speak with you immediately. Are you somewhere private?" I glanced back at the dining room, where 6 pairs of eyes were watching me with varying degrees of interest and contempt. "Not exactly." "Then I'll be brief. Henderson Industries is in trouble. Serious trouble. David's father made some catastrophic investments before his death, and now the SEC is investigating. The family's assets are going to be frozen, and there's talk of criminal charges." My heart stopped, but my voice remained steady. How serious? Bankruptcy within 60 days. Possible federal indictment. Claire, they're going to lose everything. I closed my eyes, processing the information. In the dining room, I could hear Patricia making snide comments about people who couldn't afford to take calls in private. She had no idea she was about to lose the house she was sitting in, the jewelry she was wearing, the lifestyle she'd used as a weapon against me for 3 years. What do they need? I asked quietly. Immediate liquidity. About $50 million to start, and a legal team that specializes in federal financial crimes. The kind of team that costs more than most people make in a lifetime. I took a slow breath. $50 million. It was less than I'd made in interest last quarter. I'll handle it, I said. Claire, Harrison's voice carried a warning. This isn't your responsibility. You've kept your assets separate for good reason. Getting involved in this could expose everything you've worked to protect. I understand. But Harrison, David doesn't know. None of them know. There was a pause. Are you sure about this? I'm sure. Set up the transfers and get me Marcus Goldberg's team. Marcus Goldberg? Harrison's voice rose slightly. Claire, Goldberg's firm charges $10,000 a day just to return phone calls. I know. I've used them before. After I hung up, I stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at the family photos that lined the walls. Pictures of Henderson family vacations, charity galas, business achievements. In none of them was I smiling genuinely. In all of them, I looked like what I was pretending to be, an outsider grateful to be included. When I returned to the dining room, the conversation stopped abruptly. Everything all right, honey? David asked, his voice concerned. He was the only one in his family who genuinely cared about my well-being, which made what I was about to do both easier and infinitely more complicated. Actually, I said, setting my purse down and taking my seat, there's something I need to tell all of you. Patricia rolled her eyes. Oh, what now? Are you finally admitting you're not good enough for this family? No, I said calmly. I'm admitting that I've been lying to you for 3 years. The silence that followed was different from before. It was charged, expectant. I didn't marry David for his money, I continued. I married him despite it. Amanda laughed nervously. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The screen displayed a number that would have been incomprehensible to most people. I turned it toward Patricia. It means, I said quietly, that I have more money than your entire family has ever seen. Patricia squinted at the screen, her brain clearly struggling to process what she was seeing. That can't be real. It's real. It's also only one of 12 accounts. David was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Claire, what are you talking about? I set the phone on the table where everyone could see it. The number on the screen, $347, $892, 156.23, seemed to glow in the dining room's soft lighting. My name isn't Claire Watson, I said. It's Claire Blackwood. My father was Jonathan Blackwood. The name hit the room like a bomb. Jonathan Blackwood had been one of the most successful venture capitalists in American history, the man who'd funded half of Silicon Valley's biggest success stories. He'd also been intensely private, keeping his family out of the public eye until his death 5 years ago. That's impossible, Robert stammered. Jonathan Blackwood's daughter is dead, I finished. According to public records, yes. We staged my death after I received credible death threats from some very dangerous people who wanted access to my father's network. I've been living under an assumed identity ever since. Patricia's face had gone completely white. You're lying. I picked up my phone and dialed another number. Harrison? Yes, it's Claire. Can you please call the Henderson residence and confirm my identity for my family? The landline in the kitchen rang 30 seconds later. David got up to answer it, his movements mechanical. We could all hear Harrison's voice through the speaker, calm and professional as he confirmed every word I'd said. When David returned to the dining room, he looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Why, was all he managed to say. Because I wanted to know if you could love me for who I was, not what I had. Because I'd spent my entire life surrounded by people who only saw dollar signs when they looked at me. Because when we met at that coffee shop, you treated me like I mattered, not like I was a bank account with legs. I stood up, smoothing my simple black dress, a dress that had actually cost more than Patricia's car. But here's the thing, I continued. About an hour ago, I learned that Henderson Industries is under federal investigation. You're going to lose everything. The house, the cars, the country club memberships, all of it. Patricia made us sound like a wounded animal.
No.
That's not possible. It's not only possible, it's inevitable. Unless, of course, someone with the resources and connections to fix this kind of problem decides to help. I looked around the table at faces that had shown me nothing but disdain for 3 years. Patricia, who had called me trailer trash. Amanda, who had never included me in family photos. Robert, who had asked David privately why he was slumming it with someone like me. I've already wired $50 million to cover your immediate expenses, I said. I've also retained Marcus Goldberg's firm, the best financial crimes attorneys in the country, to handle your legal defense. David was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Claire, the question is, I continued, what happens now? Do I continue pretending to be the poor girl who got lucky? Do I keep letting Patricia treat me like hired help at family dinners? Or do we start over, with honesty this time? Patricia was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams.
I
didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected. You decided who I was the moment you met me, and nothing I did could change your mind. You saw a secretary, and assumed I was stupid. You saw my car, and assumed I was poor. You saw my clothes, and assumed I had no taste. I walked over to where Patricia sat, her shoulders shaking with sobs. What you never saw, I said gently, was that I chose David every single day, even when his family made it clear I wasn't welcome. Even when you made me feel like I was stealing something that didn't belong to me. I looked at David, my husband, the man I'd fallen in love with when he was just a middle manager at his father's company, before he knew he'd inherit anything. I love you, I told him. I loved you when I thought you were just another ambitious guy trying to make it in business. I loved you when I realized you were wealthy, but kind. And I loved you enough to give up my real life to build a fake one that would make you happy. David stood up slowly. You gave up your life for me? I gave up my identity. My friends, my family connections, my work. I became someone small and quiet and unremarkable because I thought that's what you needed. What I needed, David said, his voice rough with emotion, was for you to trust me with the truth. We stood there looking at each other across the ruins of 3 years of careful deception, while around us his family processed the reality of their situation. So what now? Amanda asked, her voice small. I turned to look at her, this woman who had spent 3 years treating me like an embarrassment. Now we see if we can build something real, I said. I'll help your family through this crisis, because I love David and because it's the right thing to do. But I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not. I picked up my purse. Tomorrow I'd carry the Hermes bag I actually preferred, and headed toward the door. Claire, Patricia called out, her voice broken.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I paused in the doorway. I know. And maybe someday, that will be enough. 6 months later, the federal investigation was quietly resolved. Henderson Industries was restructured, its leadership replaced, and its reputation slowly rebuilt under the guidance of the world's most expensive legal team. Patricia never called me trailer trash again. In fact, she hardly spoke to me at all for the first few months, too ashamed of her behavior to meet my eyes. When she finally did apologize properly, it was in private, with tears and genuine remorse. Amanda and Robert took longer to adjust. They'd spent so long seeing me as inferior that they couldn't quite recalibrate their understanding of our relationship. But gradually, as they realized their family's survival depended on my continued goodwill, they began treating me with the respect they should have shown from the beginning. David and I went to counseling. Not because our marriage was in trouble, but because we needed to learn how to be honest with each other. He struggled with feeling like our entire relationship had been built on lies. I struggled with feeling like I'd wasted 3 years of my life hiding who I was. But we worked through it because what we had was real, even if the circumstances weren't. A year after that terrible dinner, David and I renewed our vows. This time, I wore a dress that cost more than most people's cars, my real jewelry, and carried a bouquet of flowers from my own botanical gardens in Napa Valley. Patricia gave a speech at the reception about how proud she was to have me as a daughter-in-law. It was a nice speech, full of gratitude and respect. But what mattered more was the way she looked at me when she said it, like she finally saw me as a person instead of a problem. As for Henderson Industries, it's thriving under new management. I bought a controlling interest, naturally, but I let David run the day-to-day operations. He's good at it, and more importantly, he's happy doing it. Sometimes I think about those 3 years when I pretended to be poor, ordinary, unremarkable. They weren't entirely wasted. They taught me something valuable about the difference between being respected and being feared. For most of my life, people had treated me well because they wanted access to my money. The Hendersons had treated me poorly because they thought I didn't have any. Both responses were about wealth, not worth. Now, finally, I'm surrounded by people who know exactly who I am and what I have.
Some of them love me anyway.
Some of them are still learning how to separate Claire the person from Claire the bank account. But all of them understand that the quiet woman they once dismissed is the reason they still have their comfortable lives. And that's a lesson worth $50 million. 3 years ago, I shattered a crystal glass and cleaned up the pieces while Patricia Henderson called me trailer park trash. Today, I own the crystal company that made that glass. The irony isn't lost on me, but the satisfaction isn't as sweet as I thought it would be. What's sweet is David's hand in mine as we walk through our real home, not the modest apartment I pretended was all I could afford, but the estate in Hill Country, where we can be ourselves without pretense. What's sweet is the way Patricia now asks my opinion about investments, recognizing finally that the woman she once dismissed might actually know something about money. What's sweet is the knowledge that I chose love over pride, truth over comfort, and family over the easy revenge I could have taken. Some secrets are worth keeping. Others are worth revealing at exactly the right moment. And some secrets, like the fact that you're strong enough to save the people who tried to break you, are worth everything.